Good afternoon and welcome to Praxis Peace Institute's online series. I'm Georgia Kelly, the director of Praxis. Today we are honored to host a widely popular radio host, Caroline Casey. She is the host, creator, and weaver of context for the visionary activist show on Pacifica Radio Network. She fuses compassionate social activism with esoteric spiritual traditions and has a deep understanding of the myths that inform the way we live and the way politics play out. She was I think some of you know that she is also the author of Making the Gods Work for You, and is happy to do astrological readings for people. And she is great at it because of the way she mixes symbols, mythological characters, Jungian psychology, really excellent at this. So we'll talk about that later too. And I mentioned to some of the Praxis members that she spoke at the Praxis conference we did 20 years ago, 2004, at a Silomar in Pacific Grove. It was the Alchemy of Democracy. And Caroline had just returned from Damascus, Syria. She appeared on stage dressed as Scheherazade and proceeded to weave the themes of the entire conference together into one seamless narrative that really literally left the audience spellbound. So she's a master storyteller, a wizard with words, and an excellent interpreter of symbols and myths. So welcome, Caroline. It's just a joy to have you with us today.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. So yeah, we'll set forth, and let's say astrology, I like calling myself currently an entheo, anarcho, astro animist, right? So anyway, so we want to put all our things together. So so the Astro Mytho Guide to Navigating Now. So astrology, regardless of whatever people think it is or don't think it is or anything, if we go way, way back, we want to go way, way back. It's one of the original languages for how humans can fully participate. And so we'll dive into the guiding, but first, since this is another kind of storytelling, and let's say everybody here is another kind of storyteller, everything meant as an offering as opposed to an imposition. There we go. So with playfulness to and fro, we love trickster. So yeah, and one of the things is believe nothing, entertain possibilities. Because if we believe something, even due to some quirk, it happens to be the truth, we're still outsourcing our autonomy. And when, QAnon and many crackpot conspiracy things, which are rampant because cults are the toxic mimic of community, when when there was so much QAnon in the astrological and yoga and sort of spiritual communities, I'm like, wow, what in those communities made people susceptible to the QAnon crackpot conspiracy virus? And I go, dogma, dogma. Anytime we believe something that we haven't earned, or anytime we derive status from something that we haven't earned, open to possession, open to possession. So I'm very fond, some of you have been hanging with me for a while, so if it gets familiar, you can chant along, but I'm very fond of Terry Pratchett's animistic witch novels, especially the one I Shall Wear Midnight, in which the cunning man has come to town and created mob mind. And mob mind is the rough music that allows people to pick up the gun or the thing and the whatever. Oh, it draws it forth. And the young girl witch, her job is, and our job is to dissolve that, and change atmosphere, create the atmosphere conducive, excuse me, to the desirable. But what the young girl witch says is, we're all affected by the collective atmosphere. When we say like, oh, I don't know why I had that mean thought. Ooh, I don't know why I said that thing. It's like, ooh, it's the atmosphere. One of my mentors, Dion Fortune in England in the 40s, said, the purpose of ritual magic is to spiral into group mind, expanded wisdom and tolerance. And so just entertain that possibility. That as we're gathering here, we can spirit out blessings. And what the young girl witch says, she said, the cunning man finds purchase in all whose hearts are full of grievance. I'm like, ooh. I work with Patricia Ewing doing election council magic in different forms. And she said, what's the antonym of grievance? And I go, good question, because tyranny runs on grievance. And grievance covers up grief, Because grief, it's like, oh, but it's love. Grievance is hatred. Oh, and we're all, and I thought, well, I don't have grievance. And then we run across these tripwires going, ooh, ooh. I think we might be allowed to keep some grudges. As Fran Lebowitz says, grudges just means you have standards, right? So that's kind of fun. But grievance, right? The dissolving of grievance, ooh. Um, you know, and so that the cunning man, the tyranny, does not take root in our hearts. And tyranny feeds on polarity. But it's tricky, right? The training we're in, because the reality police does terrible, horrible things, which makes us, which feeds it, right? So we want to take from nature. Nature forms spirals to resolve conflicting forces. So linguistic aikido, spiraling out of the thing, no prison for the unexpected, unexpected language, unexpected ways of being, how to, play with the thing. I do cross borders and talk to right wingers. I've been to CPAC twice, ah, the lowest realms of hell, just to practice and hone our skills. There we go, and to see if there are allies anywhere, and there are. There are. The Chinese detective novels, the oldest we found from 231 BC in China, they're trying to help. Everything's trying to help us out, us modern rogue humans, because we're doing such a bad job. And they said, the purpose of the detective is to dive into the underworld in order to restore human affairs to be in accord with the mandate of heaven. It's like, yep, myths, fairy tales, detective novels, same idea. And they said, if you're going to do that, it's good to have a couple of buddies with whom to cheat death and make dark humor as you go. So all of us get to think about, do we have a couple of buddies like that, who are as perspicacious, as ourselves? Because the loneliness of the insightful person, if we're the only person seeing something sketchy, it's like, ooh, but if we see somebody else is catching it, then you can play with it, right? So, um, yes, and so in the detective novels writing to us, they said, your greatest protection in the underworld is authenticity. And I don't know what the Chinese word was, but we'll take that, meaning inward and outward for real. We're aspiring to that. They said, if you are authentic, then here's what will happen. Bad people and demons will come up and go, I was going to rob you and kill you, but I can sense that you're for real. So I want to join your team, and I have underworld skills you will need. Now, I love that. I talk to whistleblowers. Some people have done terrible things. We worked at the NSA, we did terrible things for 40 years, but we want to be good now. And I think our attitude is welcome. We will keep a wary noir eye, because all of our story might not match. But yeah, come on over. We want to recruit people to sanity, critique, and then magnetizing the all-inclusive, invitational, democratic story to come alive, and there's great opportunities available. So in astrology, it's not what's going to happen. It's what's available with which to participate. And this beautiful language of astrology, one of the great guiding languages for full participation. Um, so many of our words, I mean, etymology is a great way of cooking words back to their originating impulse, to what they really mean. An example would be privilege, right? Comes from prive lege, private law. And you go, there you have it. It's a private law. They're right there, naked in front of us. But a lot of our language is from astrology. The word disaster means against the stars, and the word consider means with the stars. So we now here are gathering to consider in order to avert greater disasters. And it's that idea of just reading what wants to happen here, and to define things like what is distinct to our species aside from our extraordinary bad manners. And it's like, um, it might be that it is our responsibility, opportunity to borrow qualities of intelligence from the flora, fauna, fungi kin with whom we share this once beautiful, beautiful again, earth, and then it also says to entertain, one of the purposes of being human is to discern the pattern of evolutionary intelligence, the liveliest possibility available at any moment, and offer oneself to that. We go, okay. So I do play in the underworld realms, and I remember one CPAC. It was pre-Trump. I couldn't do the Trump CPAC, but there was a guy going, no EPA and no regulation and whatever, because I want to play the games that I want to play. So I step in and I go, well, that's interesting because the essence of games is rules. And he's like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. And I go, in fact, this planet has a limited amount of water. That's it. The Cleopatra's bathwater is raining down on us, and we're taking so much out of the life cycle. He's like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. I guess I better change my, what did you call it, metaphor. I'm like, yes, you do that. Okay, there we go. Other lessons from CPAC. So I saw these Ayn Rand Austrian economists, right? And I felt contempt, right? And there's no communication with contempt. It's the end of any relationship, right? And so we all have, party favors, our harumph-tude composter, right? To compost harumph-tude so that communication can take place, right? So I did. I felt contempt. I'm like, oh no, that's mob mind. That's mob mind. I don't want to feel contempt. So I composted harumph-tude. And they headed right over for me because I always look like I look and anomalous at CPAC, but many interesting adventures. And they go, who are you? And I said, I'm Coyote Network News. I'm a mythological news service for the liberating trickster within us all. And they said, oh, that is so cool. And then we actually had a really interesting, see, if I'd said I'm a feminist, anyist, environmentalist, anything they'd ever heard of, right? There's a prison for what we hear repetitively, which the refreshing of language, isms, in Jamaica, they go isms equals schisms, right? Ists, we need to use some of it just to get conversation going, but to be refreshing the language. Even when we talk about capitalism, I think a mini story, because when people hear repeated words, they go to sleep or already have an opinion or in a polarity. It's like America didn't really understand racism until George Floyd. And then they're like, oh, I see it. It was a word before then. That was a reality. So to we say to react to anything is not free. To cultivate an ever-expanding repertoire of responses is to ally ourselves with nature's evolutionary trickster genius, right? So, so how to be responsive rather than reactive. And again, words. Our word "cool," popularized by jazz musicians in the 40s, comes from a Yoruba word, "kulu kulu," and it meant completely responsible. The cool guy or Gaia took care of the community. The cool musician is just the musician, the drum, the divine, no overplaying. And cool, the Yoruba say cool in Yoruba means temperature as it does in English. And so they said, language is magic. It's a way of participating. To literally imagine our heads as cool, just temperature, just everybody can try it now, just cool, moving all the heat in the head down to the heart where it belongs, because then you have cool head, warm heart, opposite of road rage, right? Which is hot head, cold heart, right? And that allows us to enter hot situations as agents of cool response, not contributing to the conflagration, right? So all these kind of fun things. So our words, right? Disaster, consider. The word desire comes from desidere, from the stars. Our desire comes from the stars. The word deliberate is so wonderful. It comes from Libra, and it comes from two verbs, librare, to liberate, and libare, to balance. So to be deliberate is to be in a state of liberating balance. Hi there.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah. So Yeah, and on and on. I mean, I just invite everybody to look up all words we use in an etymological dictionary. It's so easy now. It's so easy now. Just online, the word inaugurate comes from the augur, the diviner, the diviner within us all, who would walk out to nature, and nature by her patterns would reveal the responsible enough human, and then they would be inaugurated, right? So everything's got meaning. Everything's got meaning. Um, I'll show the chart of now just for fun,
Well, can I
but
ask you something
yeah,
first?
please, please, please,
Because
yes.
we talked a little bit about this before, and it's a two-part question.
Okay.
Like, what is the guiding narrative for 2024? That came from
Yep.
your title. And then we were just talking about the difference between disorder and chaos, because this has always been a thing that I have noticed, that the original meaning of the word chaos is not disorder. It is boundless empty space from the Greek. And they have been conflated in our language so that disorder and chaos mean the same thing, and yet they don't. And chaos, being boundless empty space, pregnant with possibility, is a whole different way of looking at things. Instead of this polarity of order and disorder, here's something else, chaos. And so I'd like you to talk a little bit about getting from disorder to chaos so that we have possibility.
Right. It's huge and vast. So, but cooperators are standing by. So what we said backstage, I said, there's two words we get from Mayan: shark, and huracan. And a huracan is the god of chaos. The hurricane sweeps things back into original chaos from which we can ladle out possibilities. And we might say in the astrological language, Pluto is the death and rebirth dynamic. Its symbol is a cauldron, everything into the cauldron, which is now, and then what shall we ladle out? Everything into the cauldron. It only does it good. All words, all practices, all teachings, all beliefs, all everything into the cauldron, just in case they've gotten stodgy, and then we get to put up our vetting standards. For me, it's like about anything. Well, everything can be liberating or imprisoning, and I will aspire to come back to your question. In astrology, I mean everything. And so wait, I lost myself in the thing. Remind me what I was about to say, Georgia.
You were going to say something about getting from disorder to chaos so that we have possibilities.
Right. Um, yeah, the vetting standards. Well, so for me, the vetting standards is it equal? Is it equal Mars and Venus? Is it equal our species and the rest of our kin? Can the truths be said without cringing? Is trickster welcome? Yes, ladle it out. Nope, throw it back in for another round of bubbling. But yeah, well, the I Ching addresses this, right? Hexagram 64. The situation is grave. It is nothing less than leading the world, back to order, right? And they say, if the little fox gets its tail wet, then all is lost. And so they said, the commentary says, the the legendary skill of the old wily fox in walking across the ice, listening, cautious, is legendary. And this is what will save the world. For all of us to be like the wise older fox, not the younger fox who gets its tail wet. And I guess that's really bad in the north. So yeah, so let me let me just introduce some of the players, and if you know astrology, that's great, and if you don't, that's wonderful, and if you hate it, that's perfect too. So I'm just going to
Want me to share
oh,
screen?
I need to share the screen, or I desire to share the screen. Can I do that?
I think I just did it.
Yep, you did. Yep. So just for the fun of it, um, astrology, all of it, this is a map of now. This is Sonoma, California in the middle here. Here we all are, sort of convening. I'm on the East Coast, but we're here now. This is the Earth. This is the horizon line. The way we draw it, this is east, this is west. But this is simply where all the planets are now. The moon is just setting, in Sonoma. So each planet represents a living quality of intelligence that resides within each one of us and connects us to the world. But the planets also contain the larger choreography. So when you ask about chaos, I look to Pluto. America has been in its Pluto return the last year. And now Pluto is where it was when this country was founded. So it's like, all right, death, rebirth. Do you want to try a democracy? Haven't really tried it yet, or death, and I guess I'll use chaos in uncareful ways, just because Steve Bannon says he loves chaos, but maybe we want to take it back from him. So Pluto, death and rebirth, and intensity, um, goes around every 248 years. So it just now entered Aquarius, which is the realm of community. And wherever Pluto goes, it stirs up, you know, chaos from which we ladle out the desirable. And for each of us also to define things for ourselves. What's our definition of desirable community? What's our definition of desirable leadership? Um, and this is also really useful in any conversation to switch polarity, to ask somebody, what's your definition of wise leadership? Oh, what's your definition of the function of government? Oh, again, it's a way of spiraling. So remember, hurricane, chaos, it's a great spiral. And I was talking to a wonderful, I call him a mathematician. He's a geologist, mathematician. And I said, what do hurricanes want? And he said, well, they want what we all want. They want peace. They're trying to take huge conflicting forces and move them to the North Pole. But our human rudeness is creating so much conflict that we have these increasing storms. But so that what do they want? They want to spiral. They want to spiral up. So Pluto has been in Capricorn, the structure of the world, our structures of governance, our structures of support for the last 14 years. And Pluto entered Aquarius briefly last spring and then went, no, I better go back into Capricorn and stress all the systems of support. What's going to endure and what's going to collapse? What's collapsing now? Condos built on sand, corruption, whatever. And what it says is anything not designed, not based on nature's evolutionary genius is collapsible, and so and then Pluto will be in Aquarius. Um, it will station at 2 Aquarius. There are metaphors for each degree of the zodiac. That the image for that is a deserter from the army following their own wilderness path. When Aaron Bushnell immolated himself, I don't have his birthday, but his birth year. When he was born, Neptune was at 2 Aquarius, a deserter from the military following their own wilderness path. And it's like, oh, boom. But because it's stationing, one way to honor that is may that be a humming throughout the world. May there be many deserters from the military following themselves, rewilding to go into the wilderness. The war in Chechnya began to end when Russian women marched into Chechnya to take back their sons and brothers and husbands, right? And we go, this is a time of necessary miracles. We'll get to that in some moments, and so Pluto's in Aquarius stationing in that degree, and we go wafting it out, just cooperating into the memosphere of availability. And then Pluto will briefly go back into Capricorn to test the structures in time for the US election. Oh, God, okay. How do we, and then, but there's some lessons, because Pluto always explores the shadow of where it is, community. Community, tyranny hates community everywhere. When I was in South Africa, everybody spoke about District 6, which was this beautiful community, even, during apartheid, of many, many different people taking care of each other's children, different people all living together, and the government hated it and bulldozed the land. And the cab drivers, even decades afterwards, still spoke of it and said, but they couldn't use it because the land was haunted by the sounds of children laughing and the different smells from the kitchen fires, and they got spooked, so they could never use stolen land. They go, ah. And just, I think one thing to play with is that the oppressor is always seeking unconsciously the medicine of what he or she suppresses, oppresses. England needed the metaphysics of India, but I think Israel needs the Bedouin good manners of Palestine, underneath everything. So So just to, well, you can tug me back and tug me away from the chart anytime you feel that people are glazing over, Georgia, or whatever. But just to introduce Mars today, right now, Mars in the sky is at 19 Aquarius, whose image is a white dove descends bearing a message of peace. And it's exactly squared 90-degree angle to Uranus, nature's evolutionary trickster genius at 19 Taurus. Over and over again this year, in the chart of Israel, which I might bring up, which is amazing. I mean, in ways to look, but everywhere the answer is the necessary miracle is for the human community to extend itself to include nature and cooperating with nature, and the whole world of biomimicry and Janine Benyus's work and what I call democratic animism, humbly cooperating. So many of you, might have heard Paul Stamets talk about how slime mold designed the Tokyo subway system. Do we know this story? It's really great. Just very briefly. So slime mold is in little individuals that come together as a community to face crisis in nature everywhere, right? In nature everywhere, because the community is smarter than the individuals, and they love rye flakes. So Japanese scientists were putting, a little space out there and putting rye flakes there, and the slime mold went out. Must find rye flakes. Found the rye flakes, many paths, and then they shut down the inefficient pathways from them to the rye flakes. Japanese engineers tasked with redesigning the Tokyo subway system were like, oh, can we borrow your slime mold? And they put out a grid, and they put rye flakes on every necessary subway stop. And the slime mold goes out, yum, 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 and then shuts down the inefficient pathways. And that's what they use for the subway design. Come on, team. Are we humble and smart enough to cooperate with the design genius of slime mold? And that's really the whole dynamic, and this is right before us now, this Mars square. A square is an illusory conflict brokered by the reality police to render people obedient and less effective. And so for forever and on the show and everywhere, it's been the wedding of all of our skills, our imaginative skills, our playful skills, with our dedicated action that is the winning combo, the sine qua non. And I love, in Thailand, they say, because we were never colonized, we never lost our animism, right? The loss of animism is a sign of colonization and obedience. In some, I think that's fun. And we say animism, it's not a belief, it's just good manners. It's just something, as though everything's available for negotiation, and so over and over again, and when, um, I'll just come back into real form for the moment. So
Right.
when I look at the chart of Israel, which I can show you, whatever, and and it's quirky to think of a country with a chart but May 14th, 1948, 6:10 p.m. is one chart, and it puts the sun, SUN, at 23 degrees of Taurus. So I go, oh, well, Uranus is going forwards and backwards and forwards over that. And it's this principle of egalitarian, either we work with things or they happen to us. Democratization, egalitarian trickster, going forwards and backwards over Israel's chart. Um, and if it were a human, you'd go, well, what are you divorcing? It's a divorce aspect, and then thought, divorcing Netanyahu, yeah, divorcing settler colonialism. Now we want to go to necessary miracles, and the impossible vision, of two states, one state, no states, blooming. Again, envision the desirable so our imaginations are not colonized by realism. It says right now the situation's too dire to allow the luxury of realism. We want to, imagine, because each planet, just entertain this possibility, each part of us that corresponds to the world says, Saturn is our authority. We want to insource our authority because it's authority. It's the part of us that we all tend most to outsource to incompetent sociopaths, murderers, whatever, or it's anything that makes us cringe in fear just in the course of the day. Like even like, oh, that bill, oh, I've got to call the dentist. We go outsourced authority, and part of it is in-source. In-source, we imagine, Saturn is our little sturdy goat. When we say somebody got our goat, it's then our responsibility to get the goat back. See the little goat, our goat coming back friskier and even less obedient than before it got, and that's good. So Saturn's the capacity to define things, and for us all to say, well, what is wise leadership? And I like to turn to nature always. Um, I lived with an actual coyote for 19 years, and part of that time was with a wolf dog for 14 years. So I know these peoples pretty well. Um, and I love the wolf model of leadership, which is wolves don't operate on um, dominance, they operate on charisma. And in wolf culture, who initiates play is top leader. Not just play, let's go hunting too, but play is top. And you can tell the wolf pup, well, the wolf leader within 10 days of birth, because it's the wolf pup with the lowest resting heartbeat, right? So I love that. It's the coolest wolf and the one that engages the genius of the pack. So yeah, coyotes, mad geniuses. Wolves very responsible too. They play every 20 minutes, no matter what, even when hunted, even when hunting. But everybody's got a job. Coyotes, mad geniuses. They're mating now. They're called coy wolves. I call them wolfotes. And it's an evolutionary advantage, I think, because wouldn't it be great if we defined desirable community to belong to and be supported by a wolf pack that encouraged everyone's, oops, I'm freezing, but I'll come back, that encouraged everyone's mad coyote unique genius. And I go, right, that's what we want. We want the awakened genius and imagination of everyone. Inner city kids, right-wing golfers, the magnetizing invitation as things are going down. It's the idea of going, oh, this is terrible. Come on over here. It's like as party favors, not only do we have a harumph-tude composter, but a magic mirror. Um, the secular critic part of all of us holds up a mirror, which is important, and goes, look, it's horrific in detail. And then the trickster part of us as well, with a wave of the paw, turns the mirror into a window. But look how beautiful it could be. And then with another wave of the paw, that turns the mirror into a door. Let's go. So mirror, window, door, like and so I like to play in the news that critique without invitational vision is complicitous with dominance, because it's like, well, it sucks, and it's like, no, it sucks is important, but work it, everything working it. Like, what does this want to be? So yeah, so I'm going to dive back into the chart if people don't mind. I just want to introduce a few more of where we're being helped out this year.
Yeah,
So
share it again.
yeah, yeah. So human community to nature. Um, and I love the work of Janine Benyus. Did an interview way back in 2008 with her that I just replayed, and it's like, God, it's good. You can find all these things on my website for free. The radio shows. It was like, oh, it could have been a minute ago. Um, as you know, her model is rather than looting nature, let's borrow her designs. And she's done a million TED Talks and everything. And um, the designs are so beautiful that it transcends conflict. People go, oh, that is so beautiful. Um, the example on hand for briefly is the Japanese high-speed bullet train had a design flaw in that when it entered a tunnel, it created a sonic boom that broke windows. So they go to the Biomimicry Institute and Janine Benyus, and she says, let's look at how a kingfisher bird enters water with hardly a splash. So they redesigned the front of the Japanese high-speed bullet train to be like a kingfisher bird entering water, and it enters and exits the tunnel with no disturbance in the field. And people go, oh, that's so beautiful. Whoa, there's a million of those. And that's the key thing. These systems that are stressed, it says only that which is based on, humbly cooperating with nature's guiding design genius will survive now. And so yeah, nature's guiding design genius is everywhere, and making ourselves available to this. So So part of the beauty, you can see Jupiter every night. It's the brightest thing. After sunset, it's overhead, just Jupiter, just to know, um, as above, so below, but that's Jupiter. And Jupiter represents the intelligence of curiosity and blessing. And for me, when I was wondering about grievance versus grief, and that grievance suppresses grief, and that what we need in the world, is grief rituals. What we need in, Israel and Palestine is grief rituals. The community of the grieving, betrayed by leadership, and many ways we could go if people want to in that one, but grieving rituals are crucial to the building of community. Like, oh, because the grief is so vast now, and it's everywhere. This language reminds us that anything in the world is in all of us, and that third world realities are first world psychoses. Um, the grief is in all of us in some form to be worked and to be expressed. We go, grief artfully expressed becomes a sacrament of kinship. It's the music from that part of the world, or saxophones. It's full of yearning, like, oh, we are with you. Oh, ooh, children separated at the border, we are with you. Oh my God, woman who just lost twins. Every minute there's some incredible, unbearable grief in Palestine, in Gaza, and the West Bank. And then anything, anywhere is everywhere. Like, ooh, so we want these rituals. I liked Doris Lessing in her novel Shikasta, had everyone put the white race on trial, not for punishment, but for ritual. We go, that's pretty good. Humanity's on trial now. We go, and I like to turn to myth. When Hercules is destroying the world with his conflagration, his irresponsible, uninitiated Mars flailing and cruelty, the gods get together and they sentence him to the underworld to learn knitting and weaving, to weave back the torn fabric of community that he'd been sundering. And I think that's good for all those sociopaths, whatever. We see them sentenced to the underworld to learn knitting and weaving. Just there's BB knitting tea cozies over there. There we go. Oh, he's right next to Putin. And there we go. They're knitting tea cozies. Just because and
Knitting
beware the
tea
impulse.
cozies. I like that, Caroline.
Yeah.
We need to go to some people who probably want to ask questions soon. So
Okay, Doc. All right. There's more. Okay. I will leave that and come back for the great events in April. Yes.
yes, and I wanted to just mention to some of the things that you said that were so powerful. I think this idea of outsourcing our power with beliefs and with we don't even think of it as outsourcing, and I think it's an important thing to just spend a little more time on it. And I hope people on this call will watch it again later too, because you're moving so quickly through ideas, Caroline. And I love this wave of the paw thing. It's very metaphoric, but very real. So I want to, if anyone wants to say anything, comment, or ask questions, this is the time to do so. Sometimes it takes a minute or so before people actually do that, but
People can unmute themselves. Yeah.
yes, they can unmute themselves when I call on them, but I'm waiting.
Conversing is good.
I think in the meantime, there's just so many things that came up while you were talking, and while I'm waiting to see if people put their hand up, I'd like to see if you have anything to say about. Oh, Lion, you have your hand up. Okay, go ahead, Lion.
Yeah, hi Caroline, good to see you again. I heard Georgia ask you about this coming year, and obviously we have an election coming. So I'm very curious to know your prognostication of the election, because things are getting really dicey.
Yep. No, it is a great conundrum, which brings us to our knees, right? Because it's like, and when we remember, what did our ancestors do? If we don't know what to do, invite in what does. Come on, whatever's out of this chaos, whatever's truly best for everyone. And part of that also is participatory politics, everybody to put politics back into the realm of sacred participation. The Arthurian legends were an experiment to have spiritually cultivated people engaged in governance, and we go, let's try that again, So, Yeah, so it's not what's going to happen, right? Because otherwise we couldn't have a democracy, but it is like, ooh, and I'm all for, magic is a willingness to cooperate with everything, and whatever the thing is. So, um, um, there's more to get us there. I just want to say the brief story of what is being bestowed upon us by all the flora, fauna, kin who are saying, what are we going to do about the humans? We got to either kill them or heal them. Let's do both. Let's kill them and heal them. Let's make everything that has ever moved humans to reverent participation available. And for us to define politics, when people go, oh, I don't deal with politics. And I go, the word idiot comes from Greek, and it meant somebody who was such a dingbat as to not participate in the community in a political way. That's what idiot means. And if we just define politics as dedication to collective well-being, and there's many ways to participate, so um, and wheeling and dealing. So no, I don't have anything profound to say, except we are always aware of um, not to be bamboozled. Neptune says about everything, is that the thing or the symbol of the thing? Um, and again, got to have what is it? Proportional voting, 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, I mean, as part of the dynamic right now.
Runoff voting.
What? Runoff. Yes. So you don't have instant voter runoff. You have instant runoff voting. Yeah. Instant vote. Yes, the other way around. But no, for the longest time, the best thing I saw at Bioneers last April was Kim Stanley Robinson and I've forgotten exactly her name, young woman who was working on climate in the Biden administration. And Kim Stanley Robinson, Ministry for the Future, right, which was very grim and dark and realistic, but he said he's much more optimistic now. I'm like, really? He goes, well, at the time, all right, we're traveling back to April. He said, isn't it wonderful that Biden has put so many smart young women in charge of climate? And there was this young woman who was there who narrated how Build Back Better got passed. And it was a combination of magic and dedication, magic and dedication. And going, oh, okay. Now Biden and Gaza is so heartbreaking. It's like, you know, but nonetheless, we experiment with opening unlikely, necessary miracles, portals of things. So back in October, with my Dream Council news, how to participate in the news by dreaming it, I'm like, oh, Biden, you're so good at grief, except for this humongous moral lapse. You should, and he goes to Israel and they love him more than Bibi because he grieved with the relatives, but his exclusion of Palestinian people is like, although it's changing. It's all very late, but changing somewhat. But at the time, I was like, well, let's see Biden addressing the Knesset. Bibi came to address our right-wing cuckoo people, and speak to the soul of Israel. He's earned the right to be able to do that. Now, that didn't happen, but these very conservative, council, and, we're just saying, Biden, you got to go to the Knesset. You got to address and wind this thing down and speak to the soul, and speak about grieving communities and speak about common sense and insist on the two-state solution, which he did last night. It's like, oh, and so I feel our task is to support that part of him rather than, at so many of the Palestinian marches, it's like, abandon Biden or, the Irish disown him. I'm like, understandable, completely understandable, not strategic, right? It's like, I don't want Ireland to boot him out. I want his Irish ancestors to come and embrace him. I want Pope Francis to get him on the phone going, your Catholicism, what are you doing? What are you doing? I want that. But then, they are now considering Biden going to the Knesset. And my friend Sean Patrick said, you had us imagine that in October, and it's like, all right, so just part of our participatory skills, like Vudava, again, necessary miracles. Speaking of which, Jupiter and Uranus will conjoin on April 21st at 21 degrees of Taurus, whose image is a white dove flying over troubled waters. And we go, right. But it's the opportunity, responsibility to really plant, the culture of all the ingenious solutions we have, all the working with the art, all the regenerative farming, all the, biomimicry things. It wants to happen. Many stories simultaneously. What's going down, what's coming up. I love that, against all odds in Ukraine, they're rebuilding with hemp. It's like, oh, but, again, to rebuild, what can we imagine that is impossible? To come out of this cauldron of suffering and carnage and conflagration, like, oh, what will arise from this? There's a huge education, everybody getting more educated. I mean, I went to the Palestinian refugee camps 20 years ago. You now remind us, you know, um, and learned so much. And it's humming and Irish background. The Palestinians are the Irish of the Middle East, and to see the desirable, but to feel the embrace. Now, again, everything, Biden did say we're building a port to bring relief in. It's like, yeah. And then, part of the relief being airdropped today, the parachute didn't open and it killed 5 people. And it's like, oh God, everything's a horrific dream speaking to us. But
Well, that's part, one of the things that happened with that is having a pause in the fighting is not solving the problem. I think that's
no,
the vision we need. Having a pause to deliver food and then let them go fight again and let them kill more people again. This is no solution.
right,
So I
right.
think that holding accountable our leaders is also part of our political.
Accountability is the
Yeah,
sine qua non for democracy and life on this
yeah.
planet. Yeah, because we are, and in this country, because we're friends of their soul, we are friends of their indictment, yeah, and Bibi going to prison, the war is so that Bibi doesn't have to go to prison. So
Yeah, you're bringing up compassion, which is something that's really hard to call on when we're angry at what's happening. So I think
well,
this is an interesting juxtaposition we need to be aware of in ourselves.
yes, and there's different kinds of anger,
Mhm.
and fury,
Yeah.
fury. I had Max Dashu on the other day or the other week, with the powerful goddesses, Nemesis, right? All the myths have told us like destroying forests, bad, whatever. Nemesis come to be hoodwinked. We bring her back. She is the force that holds accountable all those violating nature, all those not dedicated to making beauty, all those who are, whatever, Nemesis. And we call her in. And it's again, experiment, experiment, experiment. Are things going just so well we shouldn't afford to experiment? Invite in all the indigenous people with whom I've, practiced activism, like in Hawaii and stuff, and the Council of Unreasonable Women. In Hawaii, when a bad project was planned, they gathered and invited Pele in to express her opinion. And every time lava erupted under the foundation. And the scientists were like, this shouldn't happen. We'll do it again. Oh, no, a third time we creep away. At the Council of Unreasonable Women, there was a bad plan to store nuclear waste at the foot of Yucca Mountain. And I was like, come on, team animist, let's invite Yucca Mountain to express herself. And they're like, no, we're activists. We don't do. It's like, come on, what the hell? So we go, okay. Yeah, next morning, earthquake at the base of Yucca Mountain. This is what I think of your plan to store nuclear waste. It's an experimental partnering that is part of our indigenuity, going right to experiment, to wheel and deal, and for all of us, and the spirit of the land, the resolution of Israel's transit is it's really about the land. In all the mythologies, the leaders, the king, the people must wed the land. And I loved, one of the most beautiful people assassinated by Israel is, Rafat al-Anir, who was giving a TEDx talk, just an exquisite human being, so many. And he said when colonizers were here in America, they told native people, we own this land and we're going to divvy it up. Um, and he said, the indigenous leader said, if this is your land, tell me your stories from the land. And he said, of course, there was silence because they had no stories from the land. Um, I like following Sim Kern a lot on Instagram. She has a great video, Can a Settler Be Indigenous? And we go, And it's really a marvel. I mean, there are so many good people, so many great storytellers of a liberating dynamic. You know, what are the stories from the land? So participatory democratic animism. Here's when I first began to live with Stella Coyote, actual coyote, as an experiment of mutual evolutionary benefit, which had great costs and great benefits. And I hosted Lakota Elder on radio. And he said, nothing smarter. And he said, you know, we Lakota did not hunt alone. Those gifted could go into a trance and negotiate and broker a working alliance across species borders. So our skilled people would negotiate a working alliance with the wolves and coyotes, and we would all hunt together for a season. And if you want to destroy our culture and the earth, have people forget this or mock it or not even know about it. And so I think now part of what we're being invited to is experiment, you know, to forge alliances across species borders. You know, the people in Palestine speak of this, you know, again, the incredible connection to olive trees and the 800,000 olive trees that have been mowed down, you know, since 1978. And it's like, oh, myths are like, woe unto those who cut down trees, you know, the replanting, you know, and I guess what to look to many people, I love the work of Lily Yeh, hosted her on radio many times, who was drawn to leave a conventional successful career as a landscape painter. And she said just to work in horrifically ugly places to invite beauty out. Um, and she does it in the most authentic and non-colonial way. Um, she went to Rwanda to survive her village, and there were people who'd lost limbs and were the only survivors of their family and their village, and they were all inside, and there had been no grieving ritual. And this is on YouTube. It's incredible. So she gets the kids. The kids are always the first to come out, and she goes, there were bones lying around. We gotta put these bones and have people come grieve. And they did. They did. They expressed like, oh, right, which dissolves the grievance, you know, into grief. Then community could happen. And then the kids painted a cow on the side of a building, and somebody gave them a cow. And they're like, okay. And they painted other things, and people gave them those things. And then they painted a picture of solar panels. And so Lily thought, all right. So she got people to come from America to teach manufacturing solar panels to Survivor Village, the saddest place on earth, that became one of the first places in Africa to manufacture solar panels. Anyway, so from chaos, from horror, ladle
Disorder to
forth beauty.
chaos. To
Yeah,
manifestation.
ladle forth beauty. So yeah, and insist on some things. We just go equal rights. Everyone has a place to live, and equal one has every rights, because that's just how it got to be. And we want to compost all these sneaky forms of colonialism, specialness of any kind, you know, chosen people. But that's very sneaky too. You know, we, the 144 spiritually enlightened. No, it's more colonial nonsense. You know, colonialism, very sneaky virus, you know, in our way of relating. And Uranus Jupiter says, is there anything you all would like changed? You know, there's this influx, really, April 21st, just for the fun of it, going, what would we like changed? It behooves us to animate the possibilities and the powerful words and metaphors, lest we leave them by default to the dementors. Steve Bannon is a deeply educated Black magician. We've read all the same books. I know his curriculum. And so he uses the power, like Hitler, the power of symbols, whatever, to, you know, and he and Trump were texting or twittering back before Trump ran, going, right, we want chaos. We'll take the word back. We want to take America back to when it was good. And the way to do that is chaos, so that there's fighting in the streets. And that's what will be really good. Anyway, so those are, so.
A lot of that showed up in the book about Cambridge Analytical. A lot of what Steve Bannon was doing. Yeah, and I think
Right. So,
and I wanted to just mention, because we're past the hour at this point. So if it's something
okay.
you want to finish with, Caroline, let us know.
Oh, what do I want to finish with?
Yeah, if there's any last words you want to say to the group.
Oh,
because
this is so
we won't
fast.
take
This is so
any more.
fast. Well, just for everybody to say, since we get to entertain this possibility that, is there anything we'd like changed? And to go, yes, if we entertain the possibility that we're all moving into a field of enhanced synchronicity against all odds, trickster dynamic, what's the quality of what we would like to connect with? And our inner dedication strengthens our outer signal. So we're more likely to be danced into place where we can do the most good and contribute our skills in anywhere in the election as well. And local elections is crucial to inaugurate going, whatever is best for everybody, come on in and throw settler colonialism into the cauldron and ladle out actual community. Yeah, and to animate so that we don't let the Dementors, hoover the sacred dates or the sacred symbols.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Carolyn. I'm going to stop the recording now.